Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate deck techs. I'm covering every legendary creature and background from Baldur's Gate in no particular order, so let's get to it. As you see, today our commander is Halsin, Emerald Archdruid, paired with the Feywild Visitor background. Halsin is a Circle of the Moon Druid. Remember this guy? AFR? Huh? In his youth, he was once imprisoned in the Underdark by Drow nobility for 3 years before his escape. He later became Archdruid of the Emerald Grove, and at the time of the events of the game, he's captured by goblins and must be freed. He's stalwart in combat, but his personality is gentle and humble, putting value on the blossoming of life and the sanctity of emotion. I'm excited to show you what I put together for Halsin, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a great card and why I thought it deserved a deck of its own. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes not at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander. Halsin Emerald Archdruid is a 2/4 legendary elf druid for 3 and a green that says, pay a generic mana, and until end of turn, target token you control becomes a green bear creature with base power and toughness 4/4 in addition to its other colors and types, and choose a background. Our background is Feywild Visitor. 2 and a blue for a legendary enchantment background that gives our commander, whenever 1 or more non-token creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, we make a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. You can probably see where this is going. We swing in to trigger our background, make some fairy dragons, then swing in with those fairies to do damage. Halsin turns our 1/1 flyers into 4/4s, which hit hard and evasively enough that they can be a win con all their own. But as with many Baldur's Gate commanders and backgrounds, there are some details to note. First, the ability granted by Feywild Visitor only triggers when non-token creatures do combat damage to a player, meaning our fairy dragons don't make more of themselves. At least, not like this. That's okay, we have plenty of ways to sneak in with our non-token creatures and trigger our fairy factory. That said, while it doesn't give us extra fairy dragons if we hit an opponent with multiple creatures, we do get 1 dragon per opponent we hit, so our evasive non-tokens can fill our skies a little faster if we spread our attacks around the table. Second, Halsin's activated ability turns our tokens into 4/4 green bears without costing them their other colors, types, or even abilities, so that works well with our flying fairy dragons. However, it doesn't say it only works on creature tokens, which means all our non-creature tokens, food, treasures, clues, and so on, are really bears in disguise. We can change the nature of our board state at instant speed for only a single mana per object, turning our foods into delicious surprise defenders, or our clues into 4/4 attackers, which, even if our opponents block well, we can still crack before damage to draw a card. Each of our trinkets is a treasure. Of a sort. But Halsin's ability works on creature tokens too, of course. We have some obvious choices for this, like saprolings and spiders and insects, as well as some fun additional options like unblockable fish and counter-covered incubator tokens. We may not be able to use these tokens to trigger the ability granted by our background, but we can still turn each of them into a combat threat and a deterrent for our opponent's attacks. Beyond our tokens, our deck is full of surprises. We have pump effects that make our creatures massive, sacrifice outlets to upgrade our tokens or get extra value out of them, repeatable ways to populate our board and keep our opponents on the back foot, and plenty of ramp and card advantage to ensure we never run out of gas. The best part is that Halsin ties our many tactics together into a sturdy, dependable strategy. Every card we draw is like Halsin has reached into his pouch and pulled out a new and surprising way for us to take another step toward victory. What he finds may be unexpected, but with a commander who can turn our trinkets and tokens into creatures that kill, we can trust in his bag of tricks. You'll enjoy this deck if you like seeing the value you generate pile up on your playmat, ready for you to use it however you desire. Or if you like the feeling of playing a D&D druid and not being stuck in a single shape, and you want your game objects to have the same flexibility of form. So, as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section filled with cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which didn't make the cut for me. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like this deck and you like what I've done with it and you want to go heavier into that, or if you're interested in this as a starting point and you want to get some ideas for a different direction you can take it, that considering section is a great place to begin when you build your own Halsin, Emerald Archdruid, and Feywild Visitor deck. So let's begin with the part of our deck that is sort of the most prevalent. It's our tokens. We've got a lot of creature tokens in this section, as well as a couple of cards that can do creature tokens and non-creature tokens, but we'll see more of our trinkets, that is non-creature tokens, in a little bit. The important part is that all of these cards, with one important exception, make tokens that we can activate Halsin's ability to make into 4/4s. Pretty neat. So we're going to start with Pest Infestation. Double X and a green for a sorcery that says destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments and create twice X 1/1 black and green pest creature tokens with, when this token dies, you gain a life. So the idea here is for every 2 mana we spend beyond our green, we're blowing up an artifact or an enchantment, and for every mana, single mana, beyond that green, we're getting a pest. We're getting 2 pests per each thing that we blow up. So this is a removal spell for us, but it can scale later into the game. It can get rid of the most dangerous things in play, and it gives us plenty of tokens that give us value when they die, but also can just be good 4/4s for us, thanks to Halsin. Next we have Combine Chrysalis. This is a green and a blue for an artifact that gives all of our creature tokens flying. That's awesome on its own, just being able to take all of our creature tokens and have them be evasive. Again, they're not going to be able to trigger Feywild Visitor when they do combat damage to a player, but that's sort of not the way we win anyway. We make ourselves some Fairy Dragon creature tokens by hitting with our non-token creatures. And then we take our tokens and we make them huge because 4/4s are big, and spending 5 mana to turn 5 damage into 20 damage is pretty great with our commander. So being able to fly in with them really helps. And we can pay 2, a green, a blue, and tap and sacrifice a token. Tap the Chrysalis and sacrifice a token, that is, to make a 4/4 green beast creature token, but only at sorcery speed. So the idea with this is we take one of our tokens and suddenly it's a 4/4 that we never need to animate, or we never need to sort of upgrade with Halsin again. It's a beast. It's not a bear. We could make it into a bear if we wanted it to be, but at least we've taken it and made it into a 4/4 that, as long as the Chrysalis is in play, is still a flyer. So it's sort of like we're saying, this turn we're going to invest 4 mana into turning one of our tokens into a 4/4 that flies, rather than spend a mana every turn to make it into a 4/4 that flies. So yeah, we've got good options for either one. Next we have Idol of Oblivion, which can make us a token, even though it's not really supposed to. In this deck, this is an artifact for 2 generic mana that if we tap it, we can draw a card if we've created a token this turn. Which means in this deck, a lot of the time, Idol of Oblivion just sits on the battlefield and taps to draw us a card every single turn. Being able to tap and draw a card just as a reward for what we were going to already be doing most of the time is pretty good, just replacing every card that we play that makes a token with a new card. That seems pretty great. But we have the option as well to pay a generic mana and tap and sack the Idol of Oblivion to make a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token, which is pretty nice if it flies. This is one of the tokens on the deck that we don't want to activate with Halsin because it would just downgrade it into a 4/4. However, it would be a bear Eldrazi. That seems pretty cool. Might be relevant in some purposes, but generally what we're doing here is we're not cashing this in late in the game. We just want to be able to draw cards every turn. Pretty good. Next we have Joriel Monvoli Recluse. Love Joriel. Incredible Izzy art. Really cool character in the story. Yeah, like this card. This is 1 and a green for a 1/2 legendary human druid that says whenever you draw your second card each turn, make a 2/2 green cat creature token. That's pretty good. Turning cats into bears is pretty fun. We're drawing a lot of cards in this deck, so it's not hard to get that trigger. And we also have the ability to pay 4 and double green, and until end of turn, all of our creatures have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in our hand, rewarding us more for continually drawing cards, and making it so if we have, if we've got 4 or more cards in hand, or, 6 tokens, we can turn our stuff into big things. We can also, if we really want to, if we've got a bunch of cards in hand and just a whole bunch of mana, we can take some of our trinket tokens, use our commander to turn them into 4/4 bears, and then use Joriel to change their power and toughness and make them even bigger, assuming, of course, we got more cards in hand. That is a lot of mana, but it does let us take some of our trinkets and make them big, even if we make them into big creatures, that is, if they weren't already creatures. So yeah. Next we have Mischievous Mystic. This is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human wizard. It flies, and it says when we draw our second card each turn, we make a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. So these aren't the same as the fairy dragons that our background makes us, but it's the same kind of reward that Joriel gives us. Rather than a 2/2 on the ground, it's a 1/1 in the air. That's pretty good. Next we have Awakening Zone. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token that has sacrificed this token to add a generic mana, or a colorless mana rather. This is pretty great. We've got a bunch of different ways in this deck that essentially make us a token every turn. We saw Joriel and the Mischievous Mystic, which are not a guarantee, where Awakening Zone is. And not only can these Eldrazi spawn be something that we can activate our commander to turn into a 4/4 as a surprise blocker, as an attacker, whatever we need, but we can also crack them immediately if we need to ramp ourselves, make ourselves a little extra mana, since they don't require a tap to sacrifice them and make mana from them. We can even have 2 of them in play, and an opponent attacks us, sacrifice 1 to make a mana to activate Halsin to turn the other one into a 4/4 and have a sudden surprise 4/4 blocker. Seems good. Next up, we have Chrome Host Seed Shark. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/4 Phyrexian Shark with flying that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. So we're going to talk about what incubate means, but first, let's find out how many non-creatures we're actually running in this deck. So let's eliminate all of our lands and all of our creatures, and we've got exactly 35 cards that are non-creatures in this deck. That's pretty sweet. So 35 hits for Chrome Host Seed Shark, and that includes our background, which is a 3-mana non-creature spell. So that means if we cast Feywild Visitor, we would incubate 3, since that's the mana value of it, if we've got the Seed Shark in play. But what does the Seed Shark actually do when it incubates? So we're going to take a look down here at our tokens section at the Incubator token. This is an artifact token that just has one ability, pay 2 and transform it. And when you transform it, it becomes an artifact creature, a Phyrexian, that is a 0/0. So the idea is when you incubate, you make one of these tokens and you put a number of counters on it equal to the incubate value. So again, if we have Chrome Host Seed Shark in play and we cast Feywild Visitor, we're going to incubate 3, meaning we make one of these and put 3 1/1 counters on it, which don't do anything until we hatch the egg by paying 2 to transform it and making it into a 0/0. So now it's a 3/3 creature since it's got 3 1/1 counters on it. And since we can do this at instant speed, it's fun to do it during our opponent to the right's end step. So suddenly we go from having fewer creatures to more creatures. Or maybe we have an opponent attack us and they forget that we've got these incubators sitting around ready to hatch. We pay 2 and hatch it, and now it's a 3/3 that can block. That's the usual play pattern with incubator tokens. But in this deck, Halsin can turn any of our tokens, whether they are non-creatures or creatures, into 4/4 bears. So if we were to take an incubator token that's not hatched and use Halsin on it, it's going to become a 4/4 artifact creature that's a bear. It will also be an incubator because the incubator is an artifact type. However, it will get base power and toughness of 4/4, and it will have those counters on it. So if we've got an incubator counter with 3 1/1 counters on it, or incubator token with 3 1/1 counters on it, then activating Halsin makes it into a 7/7 creature for just 1 mana, the 1 mana to activate Halsin. Because those counters still count on it, even if they're not doing anything on the incubator side, because they're not doing anything on this side since it's not a creature. Halsin makes it a creature and gives it base power and toughness 4/4, so those counters now help it out. The same is true if it is a creature and it's a 0/0, well, we're just adding the bear type to it, making it green and overriding its power and toughness with 4/4, so it becomes a bigger creature. This is really fun because sometimes in this deck, when our opponents are first playing against it, they will see us attack with, a 3/3 creature, and they're expecting us to use Halsin to turn our our non-creature tokens into creatures. They forget that we can also pump up our tokens. Because if they see like a 1/1 flying fairy dragon become a 4/4, that's fine. But they're not thinking about this 3/3 being a 3/3 only because it's got 3 1/1 counters on it. They think that if we turn it into a bear, it's going to become a 4/4, because that's what they're used to seeing our tokens become. But since this thing's power and toughness are based on its counters, it's actually going to get +4/+4 rather than +1/+1, going from 3 to 4. And if it were to go to 3 to 4, it actually goes from 3 to 7. So pretty sweet for us in both phases. And having this extra sort of mana sink when our commander's already a mana sink is pretty neat. So yeah, I really like being able to use incubator tokens in this deck. Next up, we have Killer Service from the new Capenna Commander product. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment that says when it enters, we make a number of food tokens equal to the number of opponents we have. So a lot of the times, this is 3 mana for 3 food that we can turn into 3 bears with our commander if we need to. And at the beginning of our end step, if we pay 2 and sack a token, we get to make a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. So this is sort of similar to what we were seeing earlier with our Combine Chrysalis, sacking tokens for 4 to make them into 4/4s. Killer Service lets us do this once per turn, just like the Chrysalis does, because the Chrysalis has to tap to do it. But Killer Service lets us do it as a triggered ability in our end step. So we can upgrade our tokens into Rhino Warriors, just permanent 4/4s, once every turn. Pretty sweet. And we don't even have to pay mana to do it. We don't have to pay 4 mana at least. We have to pay 2, but that's half as much. And that's pretty good. And it gives us some of these food so that we're able to use those and turn them into warriors, Rhino Warriors if we want to. Next up, we've got a classic for any tokens deck. It is Scoot Swarm from Zendikar Rising. 2 and a green for a 1/1 insect with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, make a 1/1 green insect. No big deal, right? How could that be bad? Well, if it was your 6th or later land, instead you make a copy of the Scoot Swarm. So the idea here is you get out your Scoot Swarm, hopefully on turn 6 or earlier, hopefully when you have 5 lands in play and you're about to make your 6th land drop. You get out the Scoot, you play your land, it makes a second Scoot. Now you got 2 Scoots. Next time you get a land to come in, each of them will trigger and make another Scoot. So now you got 4. So it grows exponentially, and you can get an awful lot of Scoots out of this. Now, normally, in a ramp deck or a heavier tokens deck, Scoot Swarm can absolutely get out of hand, and because you can play it on a turn where you still have a land to play and immediately get a second Scoot, it's resilient, it's hard to kill outside of a board wipe, or, something that's like a Pyroclasm, which I guess is a board wipe. And it has a little bit of a reputation for being dangerous, because it is. So it's also removal bait, meaning that our opponents are going to be using their removal spells to kill the Scoots rather than our commander, which is pretty great. But Scoots can overwhelm a board anyway, and if our board is playing lands and thereby getting Scoots, those lands are sitting there making mana for us that we can use then to activate Halsin, and when we attack with, 32 Scoots, maybe we've got a couple of extra mana lying around to make the ones that don't get blocked into 4/4s rather than 1/1s and sneak in a little extra damage. It's like Halsin turning a 1/1 into a 4/4 is sort of us taking any kind of mana and making it into a Giant Growth. And Giant Growth doesn't typically win games of Commander, but it sure wins games of Limited and of 60 card Constructed. So being able to do that repeatedly over and over on our Commander is pretty sweet. Just use the Scoot to illustrate that. Next we have Adrix and Nev Twin Casters. This is 2, a green and a blue, for a 2/2 legendary Merfolk Wizard with Ward 2, and if one or more tokens would be created under our control, we make twice that many tokens instead. So we make a Scoot, we get an extra Scoot. We have Killer Service come in and make us 3 food, instead we get 6 food. Adrix and Nev doesn't make tokens on its own, but we've got plenty of other token generating effects in this deck, and Adrix and Nev doubles them. So a nice token doubler, outside of something like, Doubling Season, which is so much more expensive, is pretty good. It's got Ward, so it protects itself, and is, because it's a token doubler, also a removal magnet, which means, again, removal is getting spent on this thing rather than our commander or something else that we might value a little bit more. And it has Ward, so it's also taxing whatever opponent wants to remove it. Yeah, this is a pretty fun card. Next we have Applied Geometry. another Strixhaven type card. This is from Secrets of Strixhaven. 2, a green and a blue for a sorcery that says create a token that's a copy of target non-aura permanent you control, except it's a 0/0 fractal in addition to its other types, and put 6 +1/+1 counters on it. So we get to take anything of ours that isn't an aura and make it into a 6/6. But it's not really a 6/6, it's a 0/0 with 6/1/1 counters on it, meaning, and it's also a token, so that if Halsin turns it into a bear, it's now a 10/10, because Halsin overwrites the 0/0 into a 4/4 bear. Now it's a bear fractal, in addition to whatever other types it might have had, because, maybe we copied a creature with it, and it's got 6/1/1 counters on it. So this is the same kind of deal with the Chrome Host Seed Sharks incubator tokens, and sneaking in like a +4/+4 in the middle of combat. That can be pretty great. Now, notably, it does say a token, and it doesn't say it's not legendary. So if we were to make a copy of Adrix and Nev, we're going to get 2 copies of it, since Adrix and Nev will make 2 copies, or 2 tokens rather, but only one's going to get to stay on the battlefield because of the legend rule. But if, for example, we were going to make a copy of Tendershoot Dryad, that seems pretty good to me. We can make a copy of any of our tokens, that's already sitting around, even a Scoot Swarm. So it would be a 6/6 Scoot Swarm instead of a 1/1. We got lots of different good options here, and cool additional things beyond just making it into a creature. What's especially cool about Applied Geometry is that we can hit any non-aura. That means we can hit a land if we want to. Make a land into a 0/0 fractal creature with 6 counters on it that still taps for mana, that we can pump up with our commander. If we wanted to, we could even have that land block as a 6/6, then tap it for mana, spend that mana on our commander once it's already declared as a blocker, and make it into a 4/4 bear, and now it's a 10/10 blocker that paid for itself. That's pretty sweet. But of course, we could do lots of fun things with this. Make ourselves a token copy of our Soul Ring. That's a 6/6. Whatever we want to do here. Yeah, pretty neat. Just watch out for the legends. Next, we have Arasta, a legend in her own right, of the Endless Web. This is 2 and double green for a 3/5 legendary enchantment creature spider with reach that says whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery, make it 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. This is a great way to turn our opponent's spells into protection for us. Things that can block flyers, things that can just block in general, and of course, we're not having to spend any mana on this. Our opponents are spending the mana, and we're getting the spiders out of it. Arasta, at the right tables, can do so much work. Yeah, I love putting her in token decks. Next up, we have Ethereal Investigator. This is 3 and a blue for a 2/3 flying spirit that says when it enters, we investigate X times, where X is the number of opponents we have. Investigate just means make a clue, and clues, as you know, are artifacts that if we pay 2 and sacrifice them, we draw a card. Like I said in the beginning, we don't have to tap clues in order to sack them, so we can do the cool thing where you've got a clue token, you use Halsin to make it to a creature, you attack with it, someone blocks, and maybe they block in a way we didn't expect, or they block in a way that means we would lose our clue, but it's not trading for a creature of theirs, so we just crack the clue in response, and we were going to lose that clue anyway, and they weren't going to lose their blocker, so yeah, we just draw a card off of it. The reason we might do that is because maybe we're attacking with a bunch of things and our opponents are forced to make difficult blocks since we have so many 4/4s, and then the blocks of theirs that weren't so difficult when they were trying to eat our 4/4 clues, we just crack those clues, and they have wasted those blockers on our clues rather than on our other creatures. Works for us pretty well. Similarly, though, this is like Killer Service in that we make a clue for each opponent we have rather than a food like Killer Service. That's pretty neat. And just like Joriel and our Mischievous Mystic, when we draw our second card each turn, we get a token creature, a 1/1 spirit, a white spirit creature token with flying. So those can be pretty great. Of course, any of our 1/1 flyers becomes a 4/4 flyer with Halsin, so we get a free giant, or a generic mana giant growth. But we can also trigger that and trigger our second card draw with these clue tokens. We've got quite a few clue tokens in this deck, so pretty good for us. Next up is Reservoir Kraken. This is a rare from Streets of Ducapenna, one of my favorite sets that I always want to put in something, and it's a cool card design. It's like shakedown heavy in a way. You just don't see it that much, but in this deck, it's great. 2 and double blue for a 6/6 trampling Ward 2 Kraken. So 6/6 trample With Ward 2, it's already better than a Colossal Dreadmaw, and it costs 2 less. But it says at the beginning of each combat, if this creature is untapped, any opponent may tap an untapped creature they control, and if they do, we tap the Kraken, and we make a 1/1 blue fish creature token with this token can't be blocked. This is cool. This is essentially, for 4 mana, we get a 6/6 creature that sits around with Ward, it's hard to destroy, can be a good trampler, and any of our opponents have to give us evasion. Not just by making a unblockable fish, but by tapping down one of their creatures. If they do that, we can then attack them and be less likely to be blocked since they have 1 fewer creatures that are untapped, so they could block us. Plus, we also get that fish, which can become, for 1 mana a turn, by activating Halsin, 4 guaranteed damage when we attack with it since it can't be blocked. More of these fish get more powerful the more we get of them, of course. Reservoir Kraken can come out super early for us. It's only a 4-drop. Yeah, this is just a really fun inclusion in this deck. Next, we have Tendershoot Dryad, as I mentioned earlier. 4 and a green for a 2/2 Dryad with Ascend. Ascend means if 2 things are true at some point. Those 2 things being we control a creature or a permanent with Ascend, and we control 10 or more permanents, which is easy in this deck. It doesn't say non-creature, and it doesn't say non-token, and it doesn't say non-land. Any 10 permanents, including the Dryad itself and any other tokens we have, if we've got 10 of them, and the Dryad on the battlefield at the same time, we get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. Doesn't matter if we go below 10 or more permanents. If we lose the Dryad, we have the City's Blessing. The only reason we care about the City's Blessing is because of the Dryad, but we can lose it and we can still keep the Blessing if maybe we were to regrow the Dryad. You never know. It says, at the beginning of each upkeep, we make a 1/1 green Saproling creature token, and Saprolings we control get +2/+2 as long as we have the City's Blessing. So this is pretty nice. It's a static effect. If we've got the City's Blessing, all our Saprolings get +2/+2. And Halsin takes our Saprolings and can make them into 4/4 green Saproling bears. So they remain Saprolings, so they will still get the Tendershoot Dryads a pump, which means Halsin doesn't take them and make them from, since the Dryad's already made 1/1s and is already giving them a +2/+2 if we have the City's Blessing. So they're 3/3s. Halsin doesn't make them into 4/4s, Halsin makes them into 6/6s, because he takes them and makes them base power enough to 4/4. They're getting that +2/+2, so they're 6/6s. Every Saproling is a 6/6, with Halsin turning them into one. That's pretty great. And note here, it says at the beginning of each upkeep, not the beginning of your upkeep. So Tendershoot Dryad triggers on every player's upkeep, so we're going to get bonus tokens every turn, not just every one of our turns. And if we keep some mana up, those tokens don't have to have, they don't have to lack Summoning Sickness in order to be good blockers that we can pump up with Halsin, especially if the Dryad's already pumping them up. Because this can come online on an opponent's turn, since we maybe make our 10th permanent with the Dryad, during someone else's upkeep. Pretty cool. Next up is Season of Weaving. This is one of our 2 board wipes. 4 and double blue for a sorcery that says choose up to 5 paw prints worth of modes, and we can choose the same mode more than once. So this is a weird mechanic. It only shows up in Blueburrow, which is where this card is from. The way it works is we basically have 5 units of value, 5 utility that we can use to spend on Season of Weaving. If we want, we can pump them all into the first mode. We can spend all 5 paw prints and draw 5 cards. That's pretty good. We can spend 2 of those paw prints to choose an artifact or creature we control and make a token that's a copy of it, or we can spend 3 paw prints and return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. And so we can combine these however we want. Maybe we make a copy of something and draw 3 cards. Maybe we make 2 copies of something, draw 1 card. Maybe we bounce all the non-land, non-permanents and draw 2 cards, or we bounce everything and make a copy of something. What's special about Season of Weaving? Not only does it make it so all of our stuff that's a token is going to stick around if we bounce everything in play, which benefits a tokens deck generally more than other decks, but it's a fun interaction with the legend rule. So check this out. Choose an artifact or creature you control, make a token that's a copy of it, and then return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. If we choose to combine those 2 for our 5 paw prints, then what if we make a copy of a legendary creature or legendary artifact? Wouldn't the legend rule force us to put one of those in the graveyard, either the original or the token? The answer, if we're choosing the last paw print mode, is no. If the artifact or creature we chose was not already a token. Technically, it's no either way. So let's imagine that we're making a copy of Halsin with this, because we want a second Halsin, let's say. The way this works is Season of Weaving resolves its modes, whatever ones we choose, in order, and only after it's finished resolving do state-based actions get checked. The legend rule is a state-based action, meaning it doesn't get checked until someone would next receive priority, which never happens in the middle of resolving something. So, in this case, it will not happen in the middle of resolving something. So here is the way it works. You make a copy of Halsin. The legend rule has not yet checked because Season of Weaving is still resolving. Then you bounce every non-land, non-token permanent in play, which includes original Halsin. And now Season of Weaving is done resolving. We have state-based actions check. The only Halsin in play is our token version of him. So we can just leave the original in our hand if we want to. Now, technically, that token is not our commander. He's a copy of our commander. So if we do damage with it, it won't be commander damage, even though he's the same, he's a copy of our commander. However, we don't need original Halsin to stay in play. We're using Halsin in this deck for his ability, so we're getting to use copy Halsin to make things into 4/4s as well. That seems like it makes good sense, except there is a challenge that comes along with it. Because like I mentioned, copy Halsin is not our commander. And our Feywild visitor background says commander creatures you own have the following ability, which means if we have a copy of Halsin, Feywild visitor is turned off because we don't have any commanders in play. We just have a creature that's a copy of our commander in play. So Halsin's not a great example for this. Although it is fine for us to do if we want to have the ability to activate Halsin, or Halsin's copy, I should say, before we recast Halsin. We're just not going to get any Feywild visitor triggers if actual factual Halsin, the card, is not in play for us. So yeah, interesting interactions here. But if we were to do something like make a copy of Arasta or Adrixin Nev, those are legendary creatures. That's fine. Maybe we make a copy of Arasta, then bounce original Arasta to our hand along with every other non-land, non-token permanent, and we still get Arasta triggers, and that seems fine. If we did Adrixin Nev, we would bounce all non-land, non-tokens, and then we would have to do the legend rule because making a copy of Adrixin Nev would make 2 copies of it since it doubles our tokens. So we'd have to legend rule one of them away, but we could put the original back in our hand. And now if any of our opponents want to get rid of our copy, they know we've got the original still in hand that we can replace the copy with if we need to. Pretty good. Next is Titania's Command. 4 and double green for a sorcery from the Brothers' War that says choose 2. Exile target player's graveyard. You gain a life for each card exiled this way. Search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Make 2 2/2 green bear creature tokens, or put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So this does a lot for us with incredible Dominic Meyer art. So usually this first mode is not what we're using. If someone's playing a Reanimator deck and we just want to stymie them a little bit, or someone's got like a self-mill thing going on, sure, that's fine. A lot of the times, for 6 mana, we want to get 2 lands. Because note, it does not say basic land cards. They do come in tapped, but we have plenty of dual tap lands, or tapped duels if you want to think of it that way, that we can go find and just get ourselves a little bit of ramp from this. That's great. We can also get a couple of bears. Sweet, love bears. They're not just bears, they're 2/2 bears, which is the classic, grizzly bear. So it goes with the theme of our deck. Thanks, Halsin. Or we can put 2 +1/+1 counters in each creature we control, which means if we choose these last 2 modes, we are getting some 4/4 bears. But those 2 1/1 counters are really great for us in this deck, because if we take our commander and we, like I've said a couple of times already, activate our commander to turn something into base power toughness 4/4, making it into a bear, if it's got counters on it, those counters are going to make it bigger. So if we've got a fairy dragon token and we put 2 counters on it, now it's a 3/3 flyer, we use Halsin on it, makes it into a 6/6 flyer since it's a 4/4 bear with 2 1/1 counters. This is all very nice, but it also means we can do this. We can say, activate Halsin, turn our clue into a 4/4 bear until end of turn. Activate Halsin, turn a food into a 4/4 bear until end of turn. Then cast Titania's Command and put 2 1/1 counters on each creature we control. That food and that clue right now are creatures. So we can put counters on our trinkets or any of our other non-creature tokens by activating Halsin and making them into creatures first. Those counters are going to stay on those tokens as long as the tokens are on the battlefield. So we can just have a couple of clues or food or whatever we want with some counters on them so that they are better bears when we animate them on the later turns with Halsin. Pretty cool. Yeah, I just really like this card. It does a lot for us. Next, we have a classic for Commander. It's Hornet Queen. 4 and triple green for a 2/2 flying, death-touching insect that when it enters, makes 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. So for 7 mana, we get 5 bodies, 4 of which are 1/1 tokens, and 1 is a 2/2. So the Hornet Queen, we can't activate Halsin on because Halsin only cares about tokens. But any of the Hornet Queen's swarm can become 4/4 flying death touchers. In my experience, playing Hornet Queen and Commander, this is a terrific blocker. It's 5 terrific blockers, but if we attack with it, our opponents are like, yeah, I'm not going to risk my creatures that I probably spent mana on by having them block your death-touching 1/1s just to kill your death-touching 1/1s. So I'm going to let the damage through because it's only 1 damage and I've got 40 life. To which we respond with, okay, since our 1/1 insect with flying and death touch is unblocked, we're going to activate Halsin and make it a 4/4. And our opponent is like, well, I said I was going to take damage. I guess I'm taking 4 times as much damage. And we do that for each of these tokens. And that means they're great blockers and they have pseudo evasion in the form of death touch. I always say that death touch is like evasion, even though it technically isn't it. Especially in Commander, when players are not willing to throw away their creatures unless those creatures themselves are tokens. Or have indestructible or something. So yeah, Hornet Queen gives us a lot of value that just keeps on giving. Finally, we have our last Wrath, or our other Wrath, I should say. It's 5 and triple green for a sorcery called Azuri's Predation. For each creature our opponents control, we make a 4/4 green Phyrexian Beast creature token, and each of those tokens fights a different one of those creatures. This is great. It just says, count the number of creatures in play that you don't control. Make that many 4/4 beasts, and have each beast fight a different creature. So every creature in play that we don't control is taking 4 combat damage. Whether they kill our beasts, doesn't really matter. It's going to give us beasts probably that are left over, assuming every creature in play that we didn't control doesn't have, assuming any of them have a power less than 4 without death touch. So yeah, Azuri's Predation gives us some beasts that we get to keep. They're all untapped, because they don't have to tap to fight, and everything with a toughness of 4 or less that didn't have indestructible, that we didn't control, is dead now. So yeah, a sweet board wipe, very expensive, but worth it for us, and it gives us a bunch of tokens that we don't have to upgrade with Halsin, because they're already 4/4s. Cool. That is our tokens section. Let's go to our trinkets section. These are all cards that make tokens as well, but they don't make creature tokens. So we're going to start with Witch's Oven. A single generic mana for an artifact that says tap and sack a creature to make a food token, and if the sacrificed creature's toughness was 4 or greater, instead make 2 food tokens. So this is really cool. Witch's Oven lets us, it's one of our very few, but we've got a few of these outlets in this deck, sort of like Combine Chrysalis and Killer Service. We can take our creatures, including our token creatures, including our non-creature tokens that we've turned into creatures with Halsin, and make them into something else. Maybe we've got a bad block happening, maybe an opponent's targeting our creature with a removal spell, could be our commander even, just to get a little extra value out of it. We just activate the Witch's Oven, sacrifice that creature, we get ourselves a food. And if that creature's toughness was at least 4, we get 2 foods. This is even better if we use Halsin with it, because we can say, let's say we have a food token. We activate Halsin, pay 1 mana, make the food into a 4/4, attack with it. Do whatever we need to with it. Then, before the turn's over, activate Witch's Oven, sacrifice that food, and now we have 2 foods, because the food was a creature, toughness 4 or greater. So we can get more and more tokens with Witch's Oven by just turning them to food. Pretty great. And if you're not familiar with food, they're artifacts that if we pay 2, tap and sack them, we gain 3 life. So, another mana sink for us if we need it and we need the life. Next, we have Lanus Cryptozoologist. This is such a cool card. I recommend you check out this video's description for a link to the Lanus Cryptozoologist deck that I built earlier this year, which is pretty fun. So this is a green and a blue for a 1/2 legendary elf or snake elf scout. So if we made a token copy of Lanus and then we used Halsin to make it into a 4/4 bear, it would be a legendary snake elf scout bear. Snake elf bear scout? Probably that. Yeah. Just relevant for all these subtypes for another card we're going to see later. Anyway, Lanus is a 1/2 for 2 that says whenever another non-token creature you control enters, investigate. Great. We've got a lot of tokens on this deck, but we've got 27 non-token creatures. So 26 other cards in our deck trigger Lanus and give us a clue. And we can tap Lanus, sacrifice any number of clues that we have, and target opponent reveals the top of that many cards of their library. We can put a non-land permanent with mana value that much or less from among them onto the battlefield under our control, and the rest of those cards go on the bottom of their library in a random order. So this is a great way to, if an opponent surveils or scries something to the top, if they stack the top of their library with Brainstorm, whatever it may be, we can activate Lanus and make them give us the best thing that we're able to take from them, but at the very least, take a couple of clues and send away their cards on top of their library. But generally what we're doing with Lanus is stealing something sweet from our opponent. Or we just have Lanus in play, making us non-token, or making us non-creature tokens every time we get a non-token creature in play. Both good ways for us to use Lanus. Next is Ongoing Investigation. 1 and a blue for an enchantment that says whenever one or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, investigate. So this is the same trigger as Feywild Visitor, except it investigates rather than making us a 1/1 flyer. So this is something we're going to be doing anyway, and that seems great. Getting extra tokens that we're able to attack with on another turn, or block with, if we've got the mana to turn them into creatures right away, or just crack them for draw. That's great. And for 1 and a green, and exiling a creature card from our graveyard, we can investigate and gain 2 life. This is awesome. Being able to say any of our creatures that die, we can get some value out of them in the yard and turn them into non-creature tokens, which we can make into creatures with our commander, seems good. Plus a little life, why not? Next we have City of Death. This is a saga from the Doctor Who decks. If you haven't seen sagas before, the way they work is this. This is an enchantment for 2 and a green that comes in, and when it enters, it gets a lore counter, and it triggers the ability, the chapter ability, equal to the number of lore counters it has. At the start of our first main phase, on every subsequent turn, it will get an additional lore counter and trigger the linked ability for that number. And once the last ability has triggered and resolved, we sacrifice City of Death. So for 6 turns, we get some value, including the turn it comes in. So it first enters, we trigger that first chapter ability, and we make a treasure. Solid. The next 5 turns, we're going to get to make a token that's a copy of a non-saga token we control. So we've got lots of tokens in this deck, and ways to make token copies of our non-trinket tokens, our creatures, our artifacts, whatever it may be, and we can make copies of those copies, or just any other token that we have. So City of Death, for 6 turns, gives us a guaranteed token basically at the start of our turn, after our draw step. So this is sweet. It's sort of like Awakening Zone, and it costs the same as Awakening Zone. It gives us things that we can turn into 4/4 bears if we need to, starting with a treasure that we can use to ramp ourselves if we want. Assuming we, even if we have no other tokens in play, when the 2nd through 6th abilities trigger, we did have that treasure, so as long as we don't crack it before the next turn, we can make copies of it. Pretty good. Next up is Horizon Explorer. 2 and a green for a 2/4 insect scout that has our lands enter untapped. Now I know you're thinking, don't most lands enter untapped already? Well, basic lands do, but there's a lot of dual lands that say this land enters tapped, and other utility lands that enter tapped in a conditional way, that kind of thing. Horizon Explorer adds another replacement effect, and since we're going to choose this, it means all of our lands, no matter what, are going to come in untapped, and that's great for us. It gives us a little bit, I wouldn't call it acceleration, but it does fix our mana production a little bit if we've got a bunch of tapped dual lands. But more importantly, Horizon Explorer says whenever we attack a player, we make a lander token. It's whenever we attack, not when the Horizon Explorer does. So we can let the Horizon Explorer sit there being a good blocker, giving us a trigger for attacking players. And it doesn't say one or more players. So if we send one of our fairy dragons at player A, and another one at player B, and another one at player C, this ability is going to trigger once for each of those attacking creatures, and we're going to get 3 lander tokens. Now, what is a lander token? It is a Wayfarer's Bauble, an artifact that if you pay 2, tap and sack it, you get to Rampant Growth. Search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Except, it says put it on the battlefield tapped, but our lands enter untapped. So, Horizon Explorer is amazing. It says, oh, are you attacking someone? Great. Just make a lander token. Now you've got a non-creature token that if you animate it with Halsin is a 4/4. And now you've got a sweet blocker for anyone who wants to take advantage of the fact that one of your attacking creatures, or at least one of them, is now tapped since you attacked someone. So you've got good potential blockers, and if you don't use all your mana to make your creatures, your tokens into 4/4 blockers before the end of your next turn, you just take that mana and sack those landers, get yourself more lands before your next turn. It doesn't really matter that they come in untapped if you're just using that mana to set yourself up for the next turn, but let's say you attacked with 3 different creatures, to 3 different opponents. You get 3 landers. Well, assuming you've got the mana for it, you crack one of those landers, and it will let you find a basic. It comes in untapped. Now you can use mana to crack another lander. You get a second basic that comes in untapped. Now you use the mana from those 2 lands you played to crack the 3rd lander, which itself comes in untapped, and you've got 1 extra mana sitting around that if you've got another token, go ahead and activate Halsin and make it into a 4/4 if you need to. So this really encourages you to spread out your attacks with your evasive flyers, because it doesn't matter if those tokens die, although, remember, with the way we play this deck with Halsin, they're not likely to die, since we're going to turn them into 4/4s. Obviously, if an opponent has a bigger creature, sure, yeah, that could be bad for it. But we can make them into those 4/4s, and the fairy dragons fly. If those are the things that we're going with, we just use those, and we end up replacing our tokens with lander tokens, which will either ramp us, or serve as creatures, or probably both. One and then the other. Nice. Next up, we've seen Killer Service. Killer Service makes us food tokens and can make Rhino Warrior tokens. That's why it's in both sections. Next, we have a Planeswalker, Oko Thief of Crowns. I love Throne of Eldraine, didn't love Oko Standard. That's just how it goes. This is 1 a green and a blue for a 4 loyalty Oko Planeswalker with +2, make a food. So every turn, we're getting an extra trinket token if we want to. That's pretty good. We can also +1 Oko and make target artifact or creature lose all abilities and become a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3/3. So this is an incredible humble effect. We hit an opponent's biggest, scariest creature with this, like their Galta. It's now a vanilla 3/3 elk. We hit their commander with it. It's now a vanilla 3/3 elk that they need to either sacrifice or let it die in combat so they can get it back to the command zone and recast it again. Oko shuts things down. And if we need to use Oko as repeatable removal, great, we can. And if we don't, we just plus Oko to make foods. Amazing. We can also use Oko -5 to exchange control of a target artifact or creature we control and target creature an opponent controls with power 3 or less. So it can't be a big, powerful creature, but we can send away one of our creatures or one of our artifacts, including our trinket tokens like our food. So we can steal things from our opponents. A lot of commanders that are very powerful value engines don't have power 4 or more. Well, plenty of them do, obviously, but there's plenty that don't. And so being able to steal someone's commander is very, very strong with Oko, if we want to be able to do that. In any case, Oko's sort of floor is make a trinket every turn that we can use to defend Oko by activating Halsin and turning it into a 4/4 blocker. Pretty great. Or we just make our opponent's stuff into vanilla 3/3s, which just want to point out, A 3/3 is smaller than a 4/4, so any of our things that we activate with Halsin can block and kill those things. Pretty cool. Next, we've got Peregrine Took. Peregrine Took, Pippin, is here for similar reasons to Adrix and Nev. 2 and a green for a 2/3 legendary halfling citizen that says if one or more tokens would be created under our control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. So we got another replacement effect. Gives us an extra trinket token, a food, whenever anytime any tokens would be created. Works interestingly with Adrix and Nev if you want to sort of stack those replacement triggers in such a way. But yeah, just gives us food anytime we would make any kind of token or any number of tokens. We get an extra food, and that's great. And we can sack 3 foods to draw a card. So for all the food creation we have in this deck, of which we have a good amount, especially with Pippin in play, we're able to turn those foods into card draw, something we might want to do after activating our commander to make them into 4/4s, using them to block or more likely to attack and force difficult blocks, and then any of those foods that we don't really care about doing their actual damage since they've been blocked, as long as we sacrifice 3 of them, we get to draw a card. No mana cost. Cool. Next up, we've got one of our removal spells. This is Root Out. 2 and a green for a sorcery, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and investigate. Sure, it's 1 more mana than Naturalize. It is at sorcery speed, but it gives us a clue as well. So, pretty nice. It's a good option for us for getting rid of, someone's doubling season, someone's Panharmonicon, whatever it may be. Plus we get a clue out of it. They Went This Way is next. This is 2 and a green for a sorcery that says search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, shuffle, and investigate. So it's similar to Root Out, except that Root Out is Naturalize plus 1 mana for investigate. They Went This Way is Rampant Growth. Plus 1 mana for investigate. That seems okay. I like being able to do this, and remember, every clue you make helps with everything that cares about clues, but also has the ability to draw you a card, and is more likely to with They Went This Way, since you just found another mana source. You will have to wait for it to untap if you don't have Horizon Explorer in play. But yeah, this is a sweet Rampant Growth variant that gives us one of our trinkets. Next, we've got more trinket creation in the form of Tireless Provisioner. 2 and a green for a 3/2 Elf Scout with landfall. Whenever one of our lands enters, we make either a food or a treasure. Usually, in most of my decks with Tireless Provisioner, I make treasures because it gives us more mana. And in this deck, that's still true. Being able to make a lot of mana and use that mana right away with the land we just played, if we need to, is sort of like doubling our mana for a turn. We can also turn those treasures, of course, into 4/4 bears if we need to, or sack a treasure to turn something else into a bear. Maybe we've made a food and we want to turn it into a bear. Tireless Provisioner, however, can make food, so in conjunction with Pippin, we have a land enter, we make a food. Whenever you would make a food, make an additional food, since you're making any token. So we get 2 foods, so we're 2/3 of the way towards sacrificing 3 foods to draw a card with Pippin. So yeah, Tireless Provisioner works well for us both ways. And it is a take on Tireless Tracker, which is 2 and a green for a 3/2 Human Scout with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, investigate. So the Tracker makes clues, the Provisioner makes food or treasures, good for us either way. And whenever we sacrifice a clue, we put a 1/1 counter on the Tracker. So this is a card that even gets bigger for us. Great. Next, we've seen our Ethereal Investigator. It will make us clue tokens when it comes in, when it investigates, and of course can make those spirit tokens as well. And Bootlegger Stash is our last one in our trinket section. 5 and a green for an artifact that says lands you control have tap and make a treasure token. So this is really, really cool. Any land that we don't need the mana from on a turn cycle, we just tap, at the very least, on our opponent to the right's end step, and we bank its mana, kind of literally, by making a treasure token out of it. So we can take our lands, and all of them have a use. We're going to be tapped out and untapping every one of our lands during any of our untap steps, since we're going to make as many treasures as we need. It's also cool if we have 3 lands, or if we've got 2 lands untapped, and an opponent attacks us while we've got Halsin in play and Bootlegger Stash, we can tap one of our lands to make a treasure, and tap the other land to activate Halsin's ability and make that treasure into a 4/4 all of a sudden. So that's a sweet way to have more sneaky creatures appear. Now, I know you're thinking, our opponents are going to sure catch on to the fact that we have all these sneaky creatures coming in. You'd think that. Players in Commander forget what's going on, forget their opponent's board states. Unless they've played against this deck a number of times, they're still going to get got sometimes, but they're going to get got a lot more than you'd expect them to. Anyway, Bootlegger Stash is really fun and a great way to make more trinket tokens and to give us some ramp. And that covers all of the major sections of our game plan. Oh hey, did you just like the video? Nice, thank you so much, I appreciate that. I'm just kidding, I do appreciate you, but you don't have to like the video just because I asked you to. I appreciate you being here either way. Thank you for joining me. Anyway, there's more where that came from. We're going to go now to our sections of support for our game plan, starting with our card advantage section, which as usual I've tagged as draw. It doesn't mean that all these cards do the draw a card action, they just give us access to more cards. So for example, we've got Bushwhack. This is a single green for a sorcery that lets us either Lay of the Land or Prey Upon. It's search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle, or target creature you control fights a creature you don't. You either find a bush or you whack something. I love the flexibility of this card. I like to put it in a lot of my green decks. Early on, it finds us a land, so it's essentially like an extra land in our deck. Or later on, it lets us fight something, so that's a solid removal effect, especially since if we spend 2 mana, 1 to turn one of our trinkets into a 4/4, and 1 to cast Bushwhack and have that 4/4 fight an opponent's creature, it's just like a 4 mana kill something spell, as long as that creature that we were fighting would die to a 4/4. Neat. Next, we've got Skull Clamp. We've got a lot of 1 toughness tokens in this deck. But let's read the card first. It's a single generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1, gives the equipped creature +1/-1, and whenever that creature dies, we draw 2 cards. So Skull Clamp is great for us. It lets us take any of our 1/1s, or X1s, I should say, and while Skull Clamp's in play, it essentially says, pay 1 and sacrifice an X1 to draw 2 cards, which is very, very powerful. It's an incredible card draw engine for us that we can activate over and over. But it's also the case that if we have, let's say, a food, and we animate it with Halsin, and then we attach Skull Clamp to it, we can attack with it, and it's attacking as a 5/3. A 5/3 that, if it dies, draws us 2 cards. So we've spent 2 mana to do 5 damage and maybe draw 2 cards, as opposed to spending 2 mana to lose that food and gain 2 life. So Skull Clamp gives us the ability to turn food, just as an example, into juggernauts, 5/3s that are gonna attack, and they're probably going to trade, and are therefore gonna draw us 2 cards. And we just put the Skull Clamp on something else. So this is good for our X1s, this is good for our non-tokens, or our non-creature tokens, that is, that Halsin has made into creatures, to give us a little bit of extra damage and that card draw for something that we could have sacrificed a different way anyway. So yeah, lots of uses for Skull Clamp in this deck. Next, we've got Spectral Sailor. A single blue for a 1/1 Spirit Pirate with flash and flying, and pay 3 and a blue to draw a card. A nice evasive flyer that lets us swing into whichever opponent has no flyers and no reachers, so that we can trigger Feywild Visitor on our commander, the ability that it gives to our commander, to make ourselves another 1/1 flyer, a Fairy Dragon token. That won't be able to trigger our the Feywild Visitor ability, but Spectral Sailor is going to stick around and keep doing it. We just choose the opponent that can't defend, hit them for just 1, and sort of treat them like a friend. Say, hey, I'm only doing 1 damage to you, I'm going to do it every turn, but I'm going to get these tokens, and I'm not going to swing at you with these tokens. I want your skies to stay clear so I can swing with this sailor. I'm going to do less damage to you, so you keep letting me do that damage to you. And I won't attack you with the other stuff. And if they decide they don't want that, well, now we've got other tokens that we can swing at them that are going to be bigger thanks to our commander. Plus, if we need card draw, we got the Spectral Sailor to do it for us. Next, we've got Ghostly Pilferer. This is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Spirit Rogue that says whenever this creature becomes untapped, you may pay 2 generic mana to draw a card. Cool. It's sort of like a Key to the City. That seems neat. And it also says whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, we draw a card. That's awesome in Commander, because that includes casting commanders from the command zone. It only works on opponents, but gives us a chance to draw cards. And we can use those cards, not just for their own uses, but we can discard one to make the Ghostly Pilferer unblockable. An unblockable creature is a creature that's triggering our commander's Feywild Visitor ability and making us more 1/1 token Fairy Dragon Flyers. Great, this does a lot for us. Idol of Oblivion, we can tap every turn we've made a token to draw a card. Kenrith's Transformation is 1 and a green for an aura that enchants a creature. When it enters, draws us a card and makes that creature lose all abilities and become a 3/3 green elk creature token. So this is the same thing that Oko does, but it also draws us a card and just enchants that creature and keeps that creature a 3/3 as long as it's got the aura on it. So this is a removal effect. It's a humble effect for us. It's great. It's literally what Oko does, because this is King Kenrith transformed into an elk. That's by Oko. That's how it works. Anyway, the Throne of Eldraine story is great. You should read it. There's a novel. Yeah, love it. This is a very solid green removal effect that replaces itself, and yeah, that's all we got to say about it. There you go. Next, we've got Lannis. Lannis can draw us cards by just making us clues, but also we can sack those clues to steal something from our opponent, which is a nice little bit of advantage as well. Ongoing Investigation also lets us investigate, so we get to make some clues. Roiling Dragonstorm is next. This is a sweet one from Tarkir Dragonstorm. 1 and a blue for an enchantment that says when it enters, we draw 2 and then discard 1. So sweet, we're up a card, essentially. And when a dragon we control enters, return this enchantment to its owner's hand. All of our fairy dragon tokens are dragons. So it could be that as long as our commanders are in play, our commander and our background, or Halsin's background, we should say, as long as any of our non-token creatures do combat damage to an opponent, we're going to get a dragon enter, because we're going to get that fairy dragon creature token, and Roiling Dragonstorm will go back to our hand, letting us cast it again. We can do this every turn if we want to, assuming we can keep up that loop of actions, which is not hard to do in this deck. So being able to draw 2 and discard 1 can give us a lot of value over time for just 2 mana. Nice. Next we have Silent Hall Creeper. 1 and a blue for a 1/1 enchantment creature horror that can't be blocked. Just can't. Nice. And whenever this deals combat damage to a player, we get to choose one of these 3 that hasn't yet been chosen this game. We put 2 1/1 counters on it, we draw a card, or it becomes a copy of another target creature we control, which means it loses all of its other abilities. But that's okay. We find a creature that we want this to copy, and we're set. We just have an extra one of those. We don't want to choose something that's legendary, obviously, but it's nice. We get to have our 2 counters on it still, because probably we will have done these 2 abilities first. And so whatever it's a copy of, it's going to be 2 bigger. That seems good. The one thing that's worth knowing about this is it becomes a copy of another target creature you control. Copyable attributes is relevant in this deck, because if Halsin takes a treasure and turns it until end of turn into a 4/4 bear, and then we have Silent Hall Creeper do combat damage to a player, and we choose to have Silent Hall Creeper become a copy of that 4/4 bear treasure, then Silent Hall Creeper will become a treasure. It will be an artifact. It will have the text, tap and sacrifice this to add a mana of any color. It will not be a token, because it is not a token. It's a copy of a token. But the effect of that treasure being a creature will not make the Silent Hall Creeper into a creature, because it's becoming a copy of something that had an effect on it, not a copy of something with the effect. It's sort of like, imagine a treasure token on your playmat. Now take a photograph of it. That's what it is to copy an object. Just knowing, oh, that object has modifications to it, like it's equipped, or it has counters on it or something. If you made a copy of something that had an aura on it or an equipment attached to it, you wouldn't get a copy of that aura or equipment. So the same is true for copyable attributes, like having been changed into a bear creature that's green and is a 4/4. So Silent Hall Creeper it is possible for you to turn this into a non-creature by having it copy something that isn't normally a creature but has been turned temporarily into a creature by Halsin. Weird effects, but yeah, there you go. I guess you could use this for some reason. Maybe you've turned a clue into a creature with Halsin prior to this ability going on the stack, so it's a legal target for the Silent Hall Creeper. The Silent Hall Creeper just becomes a clue, and then you can crack that clue to draw a card. Yeah, it's a possibility if you're not planning to make it into another creature. Sure, just weird options with the Silent Hall Creeper. Next up is Garruk's Uprising. 2 and a green for an enchantment that says when it enters, if we control a creature power 4 or greater, we draw a card. When a creature power 4 or greater enters, we draw a card, and all of our creatures have trample. So this is a great effect to give all of our stuff trample and thereby make all of our 4/4s into trampling 4/4s. That kind of constant evasion is really powerful in a deck that has the ability to have a bunch of creatures that are big. But also, we draw a bunch of cards, both when it enters and when our big creatures enter. Notably, when we have a creature of power 4 or greater enter, that's not the same thing as having a creature become power 4 or greater when it's already in play. If we take a treasure and turn it into a 4/4, it is not a creature that has entered, it is an object that became a creature, but it already entered the battlefield. So Garruk's Uprising is not going to help us draw cards off of that. However, we do have big creatures that we can draw cards from that way. However, it's also the case that if we don't have any creatures power 4 or greater, we can just use Halsin to make one of our tokens into a creature power 4 or greater, then cast Garruk's Uprising, and when it enters, we'll at least draw a card then. And then everything will have trample. Nice. Next, we've got Peregrine Took. Draws us a card if we sack 3 foods. Root Out lets us destroy an artifact or enchantment, and then investigate, so clues draw us cards. Same is true for They Went This Way and for Tireless Tracker. They both make clues for us. Next, we have Bident of Thassa. This is 2 and double blue for a legendary enchantment artifact that says whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we may draw a card. This is just straight up curiosity. It's coastal piracy on all of our creatures, including our token creatures. So all of our sabotage effects, sabotage being a trigger that happens when a creature does combat damage to a player, this is the coolest of them because it lets us just fill our hand up over and over and over. We can also use Bident of Thassa by paying 1 and a blue and tapping it, and creatures our opponents control attack this turn if able. This is a really cool effect. I don't usually put Bident of Thassa in my decks because I'm not looking to have my opponents attack me. But in this deck, that can be helpful. What we do is during an opponent's turn, let's say it's opponent A's turn, we activate Bident of Thassa before their declare attacker step. And now all of their creatures that are able to attack have to attack. Now it doesn't say who they attack, that their controller gets to choose that. So opponent A might send them all at us, which means we need to do this when an opponent has a bunch of creatures that will die to 4/4s. And when we have enough mana to turn our tokens, whether they're creature tokens or not, into 4/4 creatures that can block or double block, whatever we need to do. This is a great way to take an opponent and say, all right, man, or whomever you are, whatever your pronouns are, all right, friend, if you are going to attack this turn, which you must, and all of your creatures that can attack must attack, you can send them at us, but we've got enough mana and enough stuff that you're likely to lose your creatures, and all we're losing is our tokens. Or you could send them at someone else. You can use this in a political way, but you can also use it in just a, like, look, you gotta attack. You're gonna lose your stuff either way, so you might as well send it at us and definitely lose it. Or don't send it at us and don't incur our ire and send it at someone else. Or say, hey, look, we can be friends here. Just send your stuff at someone else. And the best part of all this is, unless their creatures had vigilance or were somehow otherwise unable to attack, like a Llanowar Elves they'd already tapped down for mana, any of those creatures that attacked are now tapped, which means on our next turn, we're likely to be able to attack them, do a bunch of damage, draw cards off of Bident of Thassa, and hopefully also get a trigger from our commander from Feywild Visitor so that we can make another Fairy Dragon token. Great. We've already seen our Ethereal Investigator. It makes us clues. We love clues because they can draw us cards. Next, from the recent Marvel Superheroes set, recent at time of recording, we have Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards. This is a 2/4 legendary human scientist hero, 3 subtypes, for 3 and a blue. Mr. Fantastic has reach, for I guess obvious reasons, and whenever 1 or more tokens we control enter, we may draw a card. This is great, especially since we have so many different ways of making tokens, but also ways of making tokens multiple times in the same turn. For example, Feywild Visitor says whenever 1 or more non-token creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, this is the ability it gives our commander, we make a 1/1 fairy creature token, fairy dragon. Which means if we send our creatures, our non-token creatures, at multiple opponents, we're going to get that trigger multiple times. And each of those times, we're going to have 1 or more tokens enter and draw a card. So if we hit with non-token creatures, all 3 of our opponents, with our commander and our background and Mr. Fantastic in play, we're going to make 3 1/1 flyers and draw a card for each one of them. If we were, however, to make, 3 clues with our Ethereal Investigator, that's 1 or more tokens all entering at the same event, so we only draw 1 card. Still, Mr. Fantastic can draw us quite a few cards in this deck, while being a solid blocker for us. Reconnaissance Mission. I just mentioned with Bident of Thassa that it was like a Coastal Piracy. Reconnaissance Mission is just better Coastal Piracy. It's 2 and double blue for an enchantment that says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Just Coastal Piracy for the same cost. But it also has cycling for 2, meaning we can pay 2 and discard it from our hand to draw a card. Something we would do if we just don't have the extra mana lying around to cast it, or we want to save our mana in order to activate Halsin during that turn and say, you know what, we don't need a bunch of cards, we just need 1 right now. Reconnaissance Mission gives us that flexibility. Next, at time of recording, the Hobbit set is the most recent set in Standard. So you're going to be seeing, if you tune in a couple of weeks to my channel, a Bjorn the Fierce deck. I'm excited to build this. I was excited to be able to build Halsin right around this time since this is more bear fun, but I had to put Bjorn in this deck. So yeah, here we go. Bjorn the Fierce is a 6/6 legendary bear shapeshifter warrior for 3 and double green. With trample, that gives all other bears +2/+2. Remember we talked about turning our sapperlings into sapperling bears with Tendershoot Dryad in play and us having the City's Blessing, it would make them into 6/6s. Bjorn does that same effect, but for all of our bears. So it would stack with those sapperling bears, obviously, but with Bjorn in play and our commander turning any of our tokens into 4/4 bears, those are 6/6 bears. And that's not where it ends. Bjorn says at the beginning of combat on our turn, we put a trample counter on up to 1 target creature we control. It becomes a bear in addition to its other types, and then if we control 3 or more bears, we draw a card. We just need 3 or more bears, which is so easy in this deck because we can temporarily make things into bears to draw extra cards. And we can make our commander, who is a Circle of the Moon druid, who loves to turn into bears anyway, from what I can tell from the lore, into a bear. Just a permanent bear with trample. Our commander, becoming a bear, gives it access to this effect. So our commander goes from being a 2/4 to a 4/6 trampler that still turns things into bears. And we get to do this every turn at the start of combat on our turn, and we get to draw a card. Yeah, I'm just saying, Bjorn is an incredible card. Can't wait to build the deck for this. It's coming soon, so if you are watching this, I guess after September 2026, tune in. Yeah, you'll be able to see the link in the video's description to that deck. I'm excited to share it. Yeah, Bjorn is really cool and works great in this deck. Next, we've got Oran Frostfang, 3 and double green for a 2/6 snow snake. Snow? Not relevant in this deck, but very cool. It says attacking creatures you control have Death Touch, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is almost the same as Coastal Piracy, or Reconnaissance Mission, or Bident of Thassa, except it doesn't say you may. We just have to draw a card. What's great about this is I mentioned earlier the way I think of Death Touch as pseudo-evasion. All of our creatures attacking have Death Touch. So our opponents could say, I'm not going to block your little 1/1 flyer or your 1/1 Scoot Swarm or whatever, simply, or maybe not the Scoot Swarm, but your 1/1 Insect or your 1/2 Spider, because it's got Death Touch, and I'm just losing 1 life, right? To which we say, okay, post after blockers are declared, but before damage, we activate Halsin. Now you're taking 4 damage from that token, and that token, and that token. We keep activating Halsin. And when we do that damage, we're going to draw a card for each creature that does it. So Orin Frostfang is a very strong creature. Works great in this deck. I really like it. And last, we got Season of Weaving, which we can choose the first mode up to 5 times to draw cards. So that's extra card advantage for us. And that is our card advantage section. Let's go now to our acceleration section, which as usual I've just tagged as ramp. Obviously we're starting off with Soul Ring. We've got 1 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. It's the symbol of the format because it's incredibly powerful. It goes in almost every deck. If you think you've built a deck that it doesn't go in, maybe you're right, but generally you're not. It's just so powerful. The math says put it in your deck. Similarly, we have Arcane Signet. Even though we're in green, we're running a couple of artifacts that are 2 mana rocks that tap for our colors, which is what Arcane Signet does. 2 mana for an artifact, taps for blue or green, since those are the colors in our commander's color identity. Great, of course we want this. Gala Greeters is next. This is 1 and a green for a 1/1 Elf Druid with an Alliance trigger. Whenever another creature we control enters, doesn't say non-token, choose one of these that hasn't been chosen this turn. So as opposed to Silent Hall Creeper, we can't choose these modes multiple times until the next turn. And that doesn't say our turn. So we can, if we have creatures like tokens, enter during an opponent's turn, we can get more triggers from the Gala Greeters. We can either put a counter on the Gala Greeters, we can make a tapped treasure token, or we can gain 2 life. Most of the time in this, and the reason it's in our acceleration section, is we're making treasure tokens. They are tapped, so even if we were to turn them into bears with our commander, while they're tapped, they're still tapped, so can't do much with that. However, being able to have these treasures every turn we get a creature in play, which is basically every turn in this deck, can be really nice for us. It's also the case that we can pump up the Gala Greeters and we can gain life. But note, just like I mentioned earlier with Garrick's Uprising, if we turn a if we turn a non-creature token into a creature, it is not entering the battlefield, it's just becoming a creature, so it will not trigger this when another creature you control enters trigger. Next we have Simic Signet, 2 generic mana for an artifact that if we pay 1 and tap it, makes us green and blue. So we're having to tap 2 mana sources, whatever we're tapping to pay this 1, and the Signet itself to get 2 mana, and it's filtering our mana. Pretty good. We love filtering our mana. We're going to want both of these colors a lot of the time. Seems good. Talisman of Curiosity, even better. 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for colorless, or it taps for blue or green if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. Which, as I like to say, we always are. Think of it this way. Talisman of Curiosity, if we don't need colored mana from it, we just tap for colorless mana. Which means the only reason we would tap it for colored mana is if we need colored mana in that moment. And what does it mean to need colored mana? It means that tapping this for colored mana is the difference between casting another spell on our turn or not. So you have to think of this ability in another way. Would you pay a life to cast an extra spell on your turn? I would. I have 40 life, it's Commander. I would do this 5, 6, 7, 8 times during the game. Even though that cost me 5, 6, 7, or 8 life, it also means I've cast 5, 6, 7, or 8 additional spells I wouldn't otherwise have been able to cast. And the more game actions you take, the likelier you are to have won. So would you add the cost of, would you rather pay a life, would you pay a life in order to get an extra mana, in order to cast a spell? I would. And if you don't need that colored mana, you can still tap this without a cost of life for colorless mana. Very, very powerful 2 mana rock in basically any multicolored deck. I love the talismans. We've seen Awakening Zone. It makes us this Eldrazi spawn that we can crack for colorless mana at the start of each of our upkeeps. City of Death makes us a treasure and maybe makes multiple extra treasures. Horizon Explorer lets our lands come in untapped, but more importantly, makes us lander tokens, which give us repeatable rampant growths. They Went This Way is Rampant Growth plus Investigate. Pretty good. Tireless Provisioner can make us treasures when we have landfall trigger. We've seen Bootlegger Stash. It makes us treasures every time we tap any of our lands to make a treasure. Yeah, we can have our lands tap for treasure. And Titania's Command can find us 2 lands and put them tapped into play as one of its modes. What we haven't seen is the other Dragonstorm card, Encroaching Dragonstorm. 3 and a green for an enchantment that says when it enters, we search our library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. This effect is Explosive Vegetation, and Explosive Vegetation just costs 3 and a green. So that's solid as an enchantment, fine. But it also says, just like our other Dragonstorm, when a dragon we control enters, we return this to our hand. So we get to go and Explosive Vegetation, find 2 of our basics, put them in tapped, shuffle, and if we just do combat damage with any of our non-token creatures while our commander and our background are in play, we're gonna get a fairy dragon, which means we'll bounce Encroaching Dragonstorm, and we can then use the lands that it found us, at least on next turn, to find 2 more lands and do it again. Repeatable value in the form of ramp with Encroaching Dragonstorm. I can't stress how powerful this can be over the course of just a few turns. And that is our acceleration section. Let's go now to our interaction section, which as usual I've tagged as removal. We're going to start with Bushwhack. Bushwhack, for 1 green, can have one of our creatures fight another creature. Seems good. Pest Infestation can blow up artifacts and enchantments. Rapid Hybridization is a single blue for an instant that destroys a creature, says it can't be regenerated, and gives that creature's controller a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token, which seems gross, but more importantly, gets rid of a creature and replaces it with something that will die to one of our 4/4 bears. Pretty cool. Next, we've got Decisive Denial, a green and a blue for an instant that says choose to either have one creature we control fight a creature we don't control, so another fight effect, or counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3 generic mana. So mana leak or fight. That seems good. We can remove something, we can protect ourselves from a non-creature spell. Either way. Yeah, that's all. That's Decisive Denial. Kindred's Transformation enchants a creature and humbles it, turns it into an elk. That's good. Reality Shift is 1 and a blue for an instant that exiles a creature, and its controller will manifest the top card of their library. To manifest a card, they take the top card of their library and put it face down onto the battlefield as a 2/2 creature. So they get a 2/2 vanilla creature with no other real attributes. If that card is a creature card, they can pay its mana cost at any time to turn it face up, but otherwise, it's just a 2/2 creature all the time. So it's sort of like we've generous gifted them or stroke of midnighted them, whatever you want to think of it as, and gambled that what they found was not a creature. We can also use this to stymie someone's stacking the top of their deck to find something they really want, assuming it's not a creature itself. So yeah, Reality Shift is a nice instant speed way to just get rid of something and hopefully replace it with just a boring 2/2. Which again, any 2/2, if it doesn't get flipped up, much like the 3/3 here or the 3/3 here, dies to our 4/4 bears. Next we have Imprisoned in the Moon. 2 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature, land, or planeswalker, makes that permanent into a colorless land that taps for colorless mana, and causes it to lose all other card types and abilities. I really like Imprisoned in the Moon. In my blue decks, I include it pretty often, in fact. It's something that is a solid way to shut down an opponent's very, very powerful, valuable commander. Obviously, you can hit any scary planeswalker or big, frightening or value-producing creature with this, but I like to look at it as, if you hit someone's commander with this, and they don't have a way to prevent Imprisoned in the Moon from resolving, then they need either some enchantment removal or a way to interact with their own lands, or they can't get their commander back into play the way they wanted it to. Because as a land, they can't just block with it if it's been humbled in another way. They can't sacrifice it unless they have an effect that lets them sacrifice their own lands, and they can't have someone else. What they're going to have to do is make a deal with a different player to say, hey, do you have a disenchant or something to get rid of Imprisoned in the Moon? So yeah, otherwise it's just going to shut their commander down for quite a while, which could be the difference between them having the power of their commander and being able to stop us from killing them, or not. Pretty good. Oko lets us turn something permanently into a 3/3 elk. That's pretty good. Root Out blows up an artifact or enchantment and lets us investigate. And finally, we have Junkwinder. I love Junkwinder. This is 5 and double blue for a 5/6 serpent with affinity for tokens, meaning it costs 1 generic less for each token we control. So oftentimes, Junkwinder is double blue and nothing else to get a 5/6. That's very good. but it also says whenever a token we control enters, which again is at least once most every turn once we've got our commander in play, we get to tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls, and it won't untap during its controller's next untap step, almost like it has a stun counter on it. So this is very, very strong. We make a couple of tokens, we tap down some blockers that an opponent might have. We know they're not going to be able to block this turn, so we swing in with our small creatures, we basically take our small creatures and swing in with them, or we make them bigger, and we make some of our non-creature tokens into 4/4 big creatures, and swing in with a bunch of 4/4s, do a bunch of damage to that opponent, and then we go to their turn, and those things that we tap down don't untap. Meaning, they're not going to be able to attack us back with them, but also the other players at the table can attack them without having to worry about those tapped creatures blocking. And then we get to our turn and we can do it again. As long as they haven't fielded other creatures in the meantime, they're still all tapped down. And if they have fielded other creatures in the meantime, we're probably going to be able to tap them down as well. Especially since after we do damage to a player, assuming we have our commander and our background in play, we're getting at least one more token into play from that fairy dragon. So we can use that to set up for the next opponent, or we can spread this around to players at the table. Junkwinder can do it really overperforms in a deck like this one, especially one that is token based but also hits hard. So yeah, very cool. And that covers our interaction section. We have seen both of our Wraths already, but I'll call them out. Season of Weaving can bounce each non-land, non-token permanent back to its owner's hand, and Azuri's Predation can essentially do 4 damage to every creature we don't control by making a 4/4 Phyrexian Beast for us for each of those things, and we get to keep the beasts if they survive that Wrath. Very cool. So that is our Wrath section, and that covers all of our support categories for the deck. We do have some supplemental categories as well. We're going to start with our Payoffs. These are all cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway. And we've seen all of them. Gallagreators cares about us having creatures enter. We've got a lot of token creatures. I Love Oblivion cares about us having tokens enter by giving us the ability to draw a card. When non-token creatures enter, Lannis is going to let us investigate. When we have dragons come in, Roiling Dragonstorm or Encroaching Dragonstorm will both bounce themselves to our hand. Pippin gives us an extra food every time we make a token. Adrix and Nev gives us an extra token every time we make any tokens. Mr. Fantastic draws us a card when we have any number of tokens enter, once per event, of course. Bjorn makes our bears bigger and lets us draw cards when we have enough bears. And Junkwinder loves us having tokens enter and taps down our opponent's stuff and makes it not untap, at least for a turn cycle. So, very cool. That is our payoff section. Let's talk about our evasion section. These are all cards that give our stuff evasion somehow. We've seen 3 of them. Combine Chrysalis gives all of our creature tokens flying, Garruk's Uprising gives all of our creatures trample, and Bjorn gives all of our bears, or gives 1 creature per turn a trample counter, in addition to making it a bear. So we can just make things permanently able to trample 1 per combat phase of ours. We haven't seen Tetsuko Umezawa, Fugitive. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary human rogue that says creatures we control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. So Tetsuko is interesting in this deck. Tetsuko makes our 1/1 creatures, our tokens, our other small creatures, unblockable, including Tetsuko themselves. So we can attack with Tetsuko, and every turn guarantee that we're going to do combat damage to an opponent. It's only going to be 1, but that's enough to make us a fairy dragon, which we can then make into a 4/4, which can block that turn, so it's like we didn't lose a creature in terms of being able to block. And if we have any of our 1/1 flyers attacking, we just attack with them, or 1/1 creatures at all, 1/1 tokens, we attack with them, go to the declare blockers step, they can't be blocked, and then before damage, we activate Halsin and turn them into guaranteed 4 damage with any of those tokens. Tetsuko really changes the texture of the way this deck plays, and I like to put a few cards in that will change that texture each time. You know, it calls back to the bag of tricks, D&D wondrous item with Tetsuko. So yeah, really like this card in here. That is our evasion section, but we also have an Evasives section. These are all creatures that can get in, or make something that can get in, and do guaranteed damage to our opponent. And if those things are not tokens, it's going to trigger our commander's ability that Halsin gets from Feywild Visitor, and also make us those Fairy Dragon tokens. So Spectral Sailor flies. Ghostly Pilferer, if we discard a card, can't be blocked. Grey Harbor Merfolk is 1 and a blue for a 0/3 Merfolk rogue that can't be blocked, that has +2/+0 as long as we control a commander that's a creature or planeswalker. So as long as our commander is in play, this is a 2/3 unblockable creature, and that's pretty good. Interestingly, as well, this would still be unblockable even without that bonus if it didn't have this ability, thanks to Tetsuko, because it's got a power of less than 1. But why would we care about it being unblocked? Anyway, stuff to think about. But an unblockable 2/3 for 2 is pretty great. Yeah. Mischievous Mystic flies, and so do the fairies that it makes. Silent Hall Creeper can't be blocked, at least before it becomes a copy of another creature we control. Tetsuko makes all of our creatures that are toughness or power 1 or less unblockable, including Tetsuko themselves. Ethereal Investigator flies, as do its tokens that it makes. Reservoir Kraken has trample, but more importantly, or I guess equally importantly, makes unblockable fish. That seems good. Bjorn tramples and can put trample on one other creature every turn. And Hornet Queen flies, as do the 4 1/1 death touching flyers that it makes. So that covers our Evasives section. We've got a few more sections going on here, starting with our pump section. We've seen all but 2 of these. Joriel can pump up our creatures and give them all base power and toughness equal to the number of cards in our hand. Bjorn can give all of our bears, or gives all of our bears, +2/+2, and Titania's Command can put 2 1/1 counters on each creature we control. We also have Beastmaster Ascension. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment that says whenever a creature we control attacks, we may put a quest counter on this enchantment. Quest counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by Beastmaster Ascension. And as long as this enchantment has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5, just constantly. Sorry, Tetsuko. Yeah, you're huge now. You're a 6/8. So you're not unblockable anymore. However, this does take our 1/1 Fairy Dragon Flyers and make them into 6/6s, because they're getting +5/+5. And since they're tokens, we can take Halsin, activate Halsin, and make our Fairy Dragon Flyers into Fairy Dragon Bear Flyers, which are now 4/4s, which are now 9/9s. So attacking with 9/9s in the air seems pretty great. Beastmaster Ascension is very strong and definitely wins the game for us easily in this deck with all the attacking we're doing. Last, though, is Diligent Zookeeper. 3 and a green for a 4/4 human citizen ally from the Avatar The Last Airbender set that says each non-human creature we control gets +1/+1 for each of its creature types, to a maximum of 10. This is crazy strong in this deck. Bjorn is a bear shapeshifter warrior. None of those are human, so this is a non-human, so it's getting +3/+3, so it's a 9/9 trampler that's also giving all of our other bears +2/+2. Joriel's not getting a benefit from this because Joriel's a human, but her cats become 3/3 since they have the cat type. And if we were to make one of those cats into a cat bear with Halsin, its base power and toughness becomes 4/4, and now it has 2 non-human subtypes, so it's going to become a 6/6. This is especially cool because it also affects Halsin himself. Halsin is an elf druid, so Halsin goes from being a 2/4 to being a 4/6, and any of those Feywild Visitor Fairy Dragon creature tokens are automatically 3/3s since they are 1/1s that are getting +1/+1 for each of their subtypes, which are Fairy and Dragon. If we were to take one of them and make it into a bear with Halsin, remember, it gets bear, it gets the bear type in addition to its other types, so it would become a base power and toughness 4/4 bear fairy dragon, so it's a flying 7/7. All of these flying 7/7s running around, yeah, you can see how Diligent Zookeeper and Beastmaster Ascension are sort of doing the same job in this deck. Very cool. So that covers our pump section. We're going to talk about our protection. We've only got a little bit of it. We've seen Decisive Denial. It's in the protection section because that's generally where I put counter spells like this. It protects us from a non-creature spell as long as our opponent doesn't pay 3, which seems pretty good. And we also have the Swifties. Swiftfoot Boots are 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature Hexproof and Haste. Haste can be relevant in this deck, but generally we're using this to make Halsin Hexproof and thereby not have to recast our 4-mana commander unless he gets somehow wiped, with a sweeper or, some kind of edict effect, something like that. As long as he's protected from being targeted, that seems pretty good to me. So that covers our protection section, and we've also talked about the fact that we have some outlets in this deck for sacrificing our things if we need to. Witch's Oven can sacrifice any of our creatures and make us a food, or maybe 2 food if that sacrificed creature's power was 4 or greater. Combine Chrysalis lets us sack a token for 4 mana to make a 4/4 beast. Killer Service lets us sacrifice a token for 2 mana to make a 4/4 Rhino Warrior. And Pippin lets us sacrifice 3 foods if we want to just draw a card. So pretty good. Good options for ways to use our stuff beyond just the obvious uses of them. So kind of goes with our theme of Halsin changing forms and having everything else of ours change forms as well. Cool. That covers all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basics. We are running 18 basic lands, 10 forests, 8 islands. This is a solid balance for our mana production. We are definitely more green than blue, but it's close enough that we're not going to be in a situation where we're lacking blue on turn 3 in order to cast our background, so we're pretty set. And of course, we're using the Baldur's Gate basics with, flavor text on them. I like to read the flavor text every time I play a basic land, if I've got basic lands that have flavor text, so I encourage you to do the same. Next, we have Rain-Slicked Copse. This is a bicycle land. It is a forest island, so it's got both of the basic land types, so it inherently taps for green or blue. It comes in tapped, so it's a tap land with those basic types, which is pretty good for us. Or we can cycle it, so we can pay 2 and discard it from our hand to draw a card. Something we might do if we're desperate for card draw early on, not something that usually happens in this deck since we have so much card advantage and so many clues, or late in the game when we just don't need any more mana, which again, we're not usually doing in this deck because we can always use our mana to activate Halsin. Still, it's nice to have the option here. But the reason it's even better that it's a forest and an island is because we're running a check land. This is Hinterland Harbor. It's a land that taps for green or blue and enters tapped unless we control a forest or an island. Doesn't say basic, which means we've got 18 basic lands that will let this come in as an untapped duel, but also Rain-Slicked Copse is a forest and an island, so it will let Hinterland Harbor come in untapped. We also have a Tango land, so technically we have 20 lands in the deck with basic types that Hinterland Harbor will be able to come in as an untapped duel for. But if you were to want to upgrade this, don't, because it's very inexpensive, and the normal upgrade path I say for check lands is slow lands, but we've got a slow land in this deck, so might as well keep it. If you were to want to upgrade the Copse, I would suggest Breeding Pool, the shock land. It's just much more expensive, but it can come in untapped for us, although it doesn't give us the ability to cycle it. That's okay. Next, we've got Restless Vinestalk. This is a creature land. A tap land that taps for green or blue, or we can pay 3 a green and a blue, and until end of turn, it becomes a 5/5 green and blue plant creature with trample that's still a land. Very, thematic, in that it's one more thing that becomes a different kind of thing in our druid deck. And it says whenever it attacks, up to 1 target creature has base power and toughness 3/3 until end of turn. You can look at this as us pumping up one of our flyers, like one of our 1/1 flying fairy dragons. That's true. But I usually look at Restless Vinestalk, especially in this deck, as take one of our opponent's creatures, because it doesn't say target creature you control, and turn it into something that can die to one of our 4/4s. So Restless Vinestalk, in a way, is a humble effect, even though it doesn't get rid of the target creature's abilities. It does make that creature small enough that it can't profitably block against one of our 4/4s, especially if our 4/4s are even bigger thanks to our effects. And it can't block the Vinestalk either, because the Vinestalk is a 5/5, and it has trample. Pretty good. I just love creature lands. This can be a great way to neutralize a blocker, to pump up an attacker, to have a surprise blocker that's bigger than a 4/4 if we need it to do that, and creature lands are just fun. We've got 2 filter lands. We're going to start with Overflowing Basin. This is a land with the same text as Simic Signet. Pay 1 and tap it to make a green and a blue. Everything I said about the Signet is just as true here. It's beautiful because it's originally from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, I believe, or the Commander product there. So yeah, great. We're also running Flooded Grove. This is a land that can just tap for colorless mana, or we can pay a green or a blue into it to tap it for double green, double blue, or one of each. So this seems like it's strictly better than our Overflowing Basin, but note, it can't tap for colored mana without us paying colored mana into it. If we only have like a Flooded Grove and a Soul Ring, then we can't make colored mana at all because we need a green or a blue in order to have it make colored mana. Otherwise, it's just colorless. As opposed to the Overflowing Basin, which if we tap our Soul Ring, we can pay one of those mana into it and filter it into a green and a blue. So both of these are good, and both have a place in our deck. We are running these 4 fixing lands. Obviously, we're running Command Tower. It is untapped land with the same text as Arcane Signet. Taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, blue or green. Great. An untapped duel. Yeah, love that. Nothing else to say about that. We would run this if it was tapped, like Path of Ancestry. A tap land with the same text as Command Tower, and it says when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we get to scry 1. That's great, because in this deck we have 3 other elves and 2 other druids, and our commander is an elf druid, so our commander obviously shares types with itself. Very sweet. It is also the possibility that if we were to make our commander have other types while it's in play, cool. Then maybe we cast something that has those types and we get to get that value as well. But generally, this is helping us, at least with our commander, and it's a tapped duel for us, which is fine. We've got Blighted Woodland. This is a untapped land, taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and a green, tap and sack it to Explosive Vegetation. Search for 2 basics, put them in the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Which notably, that means this is Explosive Vegetation for the cost of Explosive Vegetation and sacrificing our untapped Blighted Woodland. So it seems like it costs more since we're technically tapping 5 lands in order to get this, but it's in our land base, and it's turning 1 land drop, which can tap for mana right away, into 2 lands in play that both make colored mana. So Blighted Woodland is a great option for us that is in a green deck even better, I think, than a Myriad Landscape. Finally, in this section we have Temple of the False God. Not anyone's favorite land, but it's solid in that it taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. It's a soul land. We just can't activate it unless we have at least 4 other lands in play, so it needs 5 or more, including itself. So while this doesn't accelerate us early game, it does accelerate us mid and late game, and in a deck that wants a bunch of extra mana so that we can activate our commander and make our tokens into 4/4 bears, Temple of the False God helps us out. It is perfect for the power level of deck that is the kind of deck I make for this channel, and it works well here. So yeah, I like it. Next, we've got Yavimaya Coast. This is a pain land. It taps for colorless mana, or we can tap it for green or blue if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. So this is just like our Talisman of Curiosity, and everything I said about the Talisman is just as true here. Yeah, this is a great card that's essentially an untapped duel. I would run it. Next, we've got Vineglimmer Snarl, a reveal land. A land that taps for green or blue, and as it enters, if we reveal a forest or land from our hand, it comes in untapped. Otherwise, it comes in tapped. So this is one more card that takes advantage of the fact that we have 20 cards in this deck that are either forests or islands or both. So the likelihood that this will come in tapped is not super high. It's possible. This is a little bit more likely to come in tapped than our check land that we saw earlier, the Hinterland Harbor, but still worth running. If you were to want to upgrade it though, I recommend Willow Rush Verge, one of the Verge lands from, I think that one's from Aetherdrift, but it might be from Duskmourn. And in either case, the Verges are getting played pretty heavily in Standard right now, so pretty expensive, but a nice upgrade. Temple of Mystery is next. This is a tap land that makes green or blue, and when it enters, we scry 1. So free scry on our tapped duel seems solid. If you want to upgrade it, Hedge Maze is the Surveil land version of this, so it's got those basic types as well. But yeah, this is one of the temples, so it's perennially reprinted. It's minimum cost at basically every site you could get it from, and it's in Foundations, so yeah, why not? Now, I mentioned our slow lands. This is Dreamroot Cascade. It is a land that taps for green or blue and enters tapped unless we control 2 or more other lands. So if this isn't our first or second land in play, it's an untapped duel. Great in a game of Commander where we're likely to get a whole lot of lands into play over the course of the game, and when the beginnings are often pretty slow. So I love that these prices have gone down on our slow lands since they were first introduced in Innistrad, Midnight Hunt, and Crimson Vow. This is from Secrets of Strixhaven, which at time of recording is only a few months old. So yeah, I'm glad that this was able to come down for us. We've also got Sodden Verger. This is one of the new Tango lands for us. It's a forest and an island, So therefore it taps for green or blue, and it comes in tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. Compared to Dreamroot Cascade that just needs other lands at all. So this is likelier to come in untapped, but this has basic land types, which is relevant for things like our check land or Vine Glimmer Snarl. And yeah, so you get that. So might as well run both. Of course, you could upgrade this to Breeding Pool if you were to want to, but yeah, pretty good. We've got these both available to us. Finally, we are running 6 utility lands, starting with Demolition Field. Now, the kind of decks I build for this channel, I usually like to say, are of a power level that is desired by pods of players that are not usually looking for any kind of land destruction. Not just mass land denial, but any land getting blown up at all. And that's fair. Not everyone wants to see that kind of thing in their commander game. They don't want to have their land base get jeopardized. The problem is, there are problematic non-basics in this game, and you have to look at any non-basic that is accelerating your opponent's game plan or hampering your own game plan as a threat that needs an answer. For example, a Rogue's Passage makes Voltron commanders unblockable, and that can make you die from commander damage in 1 turn. Or a Glacial Chasm, like I have a friend who likes to run, can shut down our ability to do combat damage to an opponent while that lands in play. So Demolition Field is my answer as a one-of land destruction in a 100-card deck that I think is acceptable even by those tables that don't want to see their lands get blown up. And here's why. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and then let that opponent search for a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped. And we get to do the same. So we replace our demo field, they replace their problematic non-basic that we blew up. Both we and they get a basic into play that's untapped, assuming of course we had basics left in our libraries. And so no one's really down mana, unless of course we blew up something that was making multiple mana for them, which depending on the vibe at your table, like the social context, you want to take your cues from that to see if that's an okay thing to do. Yeah. So I think Demolition Field is a solid inclusion for all those reasons. We've got Fountain Port next. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it and sacrifice any of our many tokens to draw a card. So essentially we're taking our land and turning it into a clue kind of by paying 2, tapping and sacking the token, tapping Fountain Port and sacking the token to draw a card. I know it's kind of paying 3, but yeah, we're turning any of our tokens into cards. We can also pay 3 and tap Fountain Port and pay a life to make a fish. This is not an unblockable fish, but it's a nice 1/1 creature, which we could turn into a 4/4 with our commander. And if we've just got extra mana sitting around, which we usually don't, but if we do, we can pay 4 and tap Fountain Port to make a treasure. So nice utility here in lots of different ways, all of which are good for us. Next we've got Colony Garden next. This is a tap land that just makes green, but it says when it enters, we make a 0/1 green plant creature token. So in our land base, we have a creature that we can just pay a mana for with our commander and make it into a 4/4. So that plant is just a nice bonus for us, and it's worth taking a turn off of being able to get extra mana by having this come in tapped to get that plant. Just a nice little bonus for us. I considered running Gingerbread Cabin instead, which is a land that could come in untapped and make green mana and maybe make us a food, but I thought Colony Garden was more fun. Next is Kitchen from the Ravnica Clue Edition set. This is a tap land that makes green or blue, and we can pay 4, tap it, and investigate. So another mana sink for us that makes us tokens, and the token we like most, really, since the clues can be sacked not just to draw cards, but without having to be tapped, so we could sacrifice them and attack with them if we need to. Seems good. I mentioned Rogue Passage a minute ago. We're running it. It's an untapped land that taps for colorless, or if we pay 4 and tap it, a target creature can't be blocked this turn. This can really help us out. Not just because we can send in our one of our tokens that we've made into a 4/4 and it's big and it's doing damage, but also we can send in one of our non-token creatures to hit and trigger Halsin's trigger from that ability that he got from Feywild Visitor to make us one of those fairy dragons. So this can really help us with that, in addition to just doing damage. And as I like to say, Rogue's Passage is usable in 2 other ways. We can use it politically or strategically. Politically means we can make an opponent's creature unblockable by just making a deal with them, because it does not say target creature you control. So if we say, hey, opponent A, I know you want to attack opponent B, but you're afraid they're going to block, we will use our Rogue's Passage to make your thing unblockable if you attack them. And they'll say, sure, that sounds great, go ahead and activate it. And we say, no, because if you attack after we've activated a Rogue's Passage and made your creature unblockable, you can attack us. And then we've paid you to attack us unblockably. And they'll say, yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll declare attacks at opponent B. And we'll say, great, in response to that attack, before blockers are declared, we will make your creature unblockable. And now, opponent A is using their combat step to, assuming the creature doesn't have vigilance, make one of their things tapped so that we could attack in a little more evasively and do damage to a different one of our opponents. Even though it seems like this is costing us resources in the form of our mana, it's costing them much more resources in the form of the opportunity cost of attacking with their creature. And we wouldn't do this if their creature wasn't big enough to make an impact on opponent B's life total that it's worth it to us. So lots of good things we can use here. Plus, if we make a deal, we say, hey, leave me alone for a turn cycle, and I'll use my Rogue's Passage, then we've also gotten the benefit of that deal out of it. Great. Or we can use this strategically, which is the same thing, but we don't make the deal. We say, hey, opponent A, I see you're attacking opponent B. Before blockers are declared, I make your big creature unblockable. And then both of them are like, wait, what? Because at least at the tables I've seen people play at, it's not that common for one player to involve themselves in the combat between two other players. So when that happens, it's a fun moment, it's memorable, people get excited about things changing, and it still helps us harm one of our opponents, using the resources of a different one of our opponents. So yeah, Rogue's Passage, great for our stuff, great against or using our opponent's stuff. Yeah, love this card. Finally, we have Secret Tunnel from the Avatar set. This is a cave land that can't be blocked. So if we were to animate this into a creature somehow, it would be an unblockable creature. Cool, we don't really have a way to do that in this deck. It taps for colorless mana, and it comes untapped, but if we pay 4 and tap it, 2 target creatures we control that share a creature type can't be blocked this turn. So this is the same cost as Rogue's Passage to make 1 creature unblockable. This has to be creatures that we control, but it's 2 creatures and they have to share a creature type. Well, luckily, Halsin gives all of our tokens that we turn into bears the bear type. So we can spend 4 mana, or technically 5, in the sense of 4 here and the opportunity cost of tapping Secret Tunnel, to make 2 of our bears unblockable. And this is essentially saying for a total of 7 mana, 1 to activate Halsin on one of our tokens, a second to activate Halsin on another of our tokens, and then 4 to activate the tunnel, so that's 5 there, we're getting a guaranteed 8 damage, because as long as there's no removal effects in play, because we're getting to attack with 2 of our bears, and that they're going to be at least 4/4s each, not counting any kind of bonuses we get to that from something like Bjorn or Beastmaster Ascension or Diligent Zookeeper. So yeah, Secret Tunnel can be a real nice way for us to sneak in and do some damage. Or it could be, it doesn't have to be bears. Halsin's an elf, we've got other elves, maybe we attack with our elves. That's pretty good too, because that means we're getting creatures in that share a creature type but aren't tokens necessarily. So we're getting to have some Feywild visitor triggers off of Halsin. Pretty good. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Baldur's Gate Commander decks every Monday until I've done them all. So let me know in the comments which commander or background you're most excited to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live. Consider joining my Patreon at patreon.com/secondmonitormagic or becoming a member on this channel on YouTube. And remember, most of all, that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.